Stay right there. What are you waiting for? Kill them! Kill them both! No, wait a minute. Is it money you're after? I'll give you as much as you want.
May the saints forgive you, because I won't.
Okay, I'm with my homie, with me, Eric. Please introduce yourself, and we are continuing. So this is actually it's like a part 2.5, it's 2.5. But maybe we'll make it a third even. But it's a continuation of that we were thrust into maybe. But it's actually been really fruitful and really fun, and I'm so glad that you agreed to go down the rabbit hole in this way with me.
Oh yeah, no, thanks for inviting me to do it. It's a real pleasure to really start to explore more of Ralph Bakshi than just the ones I've seen. And this one is one that I've never seen before and didn't really know a lot about. And it just took me by surprise.
One thing I thought was interesting is that I had seen it before, but I guess because I'm online brained and I watch other things and I just forgot. I just had no real visual memory or story memory. I had the contours, but I didn't really know. I don't really remember what it was, but this was a first time watching, but I'm aware that I've seen it before.
Yeah, I remembered when I saw this, I'm like, oh, that's right. He did the whole Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. He had those animated films. And also he had Fire and Ice, which I've never seen, but I know it's a fantasy film. So the Wizards made sense that this would be one of his too.
Yeah, I thought this was a really interesting film. I was surprised because obviously it's called Wizards. It's from 1977. That's a very significant year. I think that it's also a significant year for parapolitics. I think the Club of Rome was codified in 1977.
Yeah.
It's also very metaphysically significant and likely why things that are also metaphysically significant happen. So this film, I knew had something. And I was expecting it to be more like when we did American Pop, where it was explosive color and just signs and symbols everywhere. This one was actually a lot more theological for me.
Mm-hmm.
So my main takeaway before we even get started was this concept of the Messiah or the Messiah. And I think it plays out in an interesting way. And it's not quite the Judeo-Christian or the Christian, we'll call it the more Christian version, where the young hero is really the Messiah. It's really about someone else. I won't spoil it yet, but I think it's a really interesting take on it. I think it makes a lot of sense in certain Kabbalistic traditions, actually, as a cosmological overlay and how there's a trinity of heroes. You often see this as a trope, oldest time, really. And I think that's also really interesting. And it also plays out differently than it subverts the genre conventions of the hero's journey.
Yeah, no, it does. I did notice, it starts out with the twins that were born. One is born pretty much in layman's terms good, and the other one is born evil. And in the whole movie is about how the battle between those twins plays out. So there was that I did notice that theological concept in it, but also I noticed it becomes about magic or spirituality or faith, which is represented by the good twin, and versus technology or man-made things rather than spiritually made things, which is represented by the evil twin. So I noticed, that playing out as a common theme, like man versus spirit.
I thought that was a really great jumping off point because I have a couple notes about the sort of elf queen that gives birth to the two wizards. So Delia, her name refers to the island where Artemis and Apollo were born. So a twin of night or a twin of the moon, and then a twin of the sun. So I think that's also very interesting, very relevant, probably a stylistic or metaphysical choice. But then he said something even more interesting. The narrator said they were like, well, I've been exploring this idea of plus ultra, like the negative and positive, the negative and positive forces in the universe, and that is what the magician's goal is. If we look at it more from that angle, it's just like there's a way to bring the tensions into synthesis. So if we think of that as the apotheosis of our dear wizard of the sun, we shall call him. But there's an element where you need both. Can't just be one. It has to be in opposition. This also relates to that idea of the Jewish Messiah. So interesting.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do need both. And I think that's what eventually in the first half, Avatar, who's the good wizard, he finds that out when he captures the assassin. This assassin who's a robot. I forget something 99 is his name. And he ends up killing like the president of the fairy village. But Avatar, the good wizard, captures him and decides to change him through magic and to be peaceful. And he names him Peace. And so he's taking this technology, something that he's against. Right. That's what his brother is for, his evil brother, for technology. So he's taking that and he's transforming it into something good. So there is that kind of like, he does learn you do need both. And that also, we'll get to it later in the ending, but that also comes into play in the ending as well.
This is something, I'm glad you said this, because this is something that I found very interesting through the whole film, this idea of Helios or technology, what that is, and technology, obviously. What I think personally, this is just my opinion, but I find technology or techne to really be in dialectical relationship with us. I don't look at it so binary. I'm not saying it's not binary at times, but I think of it as any kind of relationship that we have with a tool, and then we use that tool, that sort of makes more sense in a metaphysical way. Because language is also a kind of technology. Yes. Is also a kind of technology, as film even discusses. It's a very meta film. I even wrote it down. There's a film within a film that's a meta film. So I love this idea of where you're is some theological, we're going to root of something, or we're going to something higher, which is also very Kabbalistic. So yeah, interesting place to start.
Yeah. No, and it's also, everyone's always had a fear of technology throughout. And technology used to be like a new like tractor tool or something, or like a hammer. Technology has changed in different forms, and it's always been about how we adapted to it. And that was interesting to see that metaphorically played out in Wizards.
What I liked about Avatar is he is a Luddite, but he's not also completely fixed in his view, as you said. But I think even at the very beginning, after the president's assassination, with peace, but also just in the general kind of foolish nature, this is something that I'm going to come back to a little later, but his foolish nature, and fooled is not necessarily the antithesis of a sage or even a hero or even a magician. Sometimes that can be part of their archetypal role, like Avatar. you could say, even, which is also his name. It's also relating more to this idea of the Jewish Messiah rather than, like I said, a Christian. So I think that's also interesting and coincides with your point. And like, we do follow the technology increasing, and then also we see its end result. So
Yeah.
it definitely takes us, it starts off a little flower power, like a little post hippies, but I actually think it goes somewhere more interesting with the ideas.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, how it's very a little hippy dippy, crunchy, especially with Avatar. He just looks like a ZZ Top
Yeah, totally.
character. And when I heard the voice, I'm like, is that Peter Falk? And then it's not, it's some other guy. But I was reading about this later, and they chose the guy to play that voice because he sounded like Peter Falk. And that's who they wanted to get. They just probably didn't have the budget during the height of Columbo to get Peter Falk. But yeah, and Peter Falk's voice is iconic with Columbo. This kind of on the outside, he seems a little lazy, just very casual, but contains a lot of wisdom and is very sharp. And that is Avatar.
Yeah.
He's like always smoking a cigar and always weird stuff. Like he'll put the cigar between his feet and smoke it like from his feet. He's always wanting to go to sleep. He's just very lazy, but he really has a lot of wisdom when his friends push him a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just jump right in. Is that even in his initial fight, so that even a little going back with his brother, they had some kind of magical tussle right when their mother died. He transforms into an eagle, and his brother transforms into a giant serpent. So this is actually a classic Quranic story about Shiva and Vishnu, and they have a cosmic battle. One eventually becomes like an eagle, the other kind of is like a serpent lion sort of thing. And they tussle, but eventually Shiva prevails, follow that school, or Vishnu prevails if you follow that school. But I do think it's interesting because his archetype does follow that kind of character, exactly like what you said. He's like a little lazy, he's like a little detached from the world, little outside of civilization, maybe. He has this wealth of knowledge, but he's not really interested in sharing it overtly. He doesn't really discuss magic. It's not really something that he's particularly transfixed in. And he has his, like, I guess, pleasures is a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Like, he's engaged in worldly pleasures. So this can also be like very much an archetype of the magician. If you're looking like a tarot card wise, the magician is really the opposite of the fool. They're both really the same, but they can take different roles depending on the situation or the context. So that's also really interesting, like that you're bringing that in right away.
Yeah, Avatar's character, just the fact that his name is Avatar, it's always going to be definitely the interpretation is that he's a fill-in for someone else.
Yeah.
Or anyone else or everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
And then we have our young hero and a pretty girl who is a little different. And actually, I thought of you when I was watching it because of the jazz soundtrack right away. I was like, this is like very noir. It's setting us up to be like noirish. It's not really noirish film, but she definitely has some coquettish, maybe even a little femme fatale, but not quite.
Yeah. So Eleanor reminded me of Betty Boop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she reminded me of that because like she's dressed very provocatively.
Yes.
But she's not a waif. She's like a little thicker and everything's thick.
Yeah. 100%. No, yeah, that's a good point because she's unlike the other fairies in that way. Her thickness, that particularly sets her apart.
Yeah. And so, yeah, she does have that femme fatale quality because I think she's introduced as the daughter of the president. And she's with the wizard just because he's trying to teach her how to become a full-fledged fairy. And so it just seems there's some points in the film where he's obviously sexually flirting with her. Right. There is that relationship. So when we talk about like the wizard like indulging of things of the flesh, yeah, there seems to be that relationship. But also she's the one that gets kidnapped later on and they have to rescue her, and it's just she becomes a problem.
Yeah.
So she does fulfill that like femme fatale quality. It's she's sexy, she's great, you feel good when you're with her, but man, she's just bringing you into all types of shit.
Yeah, absolutely. That was very well said. I totally agree with you. I think that what I found interesting with her is that I couldn't decide if she has agency or no agency. Like I couldn't decide if she was just a foil for the two boys, or instead perhaps she had her own pathology. She had her own motivations. I still don't really know. I'm okay with not knowing. I'm just saying fine for me, but I do wonder.
Yeah, she just didn't seem like the rest of the fairies, and I think she knew that. And especially since her father was president, I think she had a little bit more agency than the other fairies. But
Yeah.
yeah,
This
but
is actually an
still.
interesting point, though, that you're saying she has more agency than the fairies. In my opinion, the fairies were like that kind of communal or mass consciousness. Like they represented more of a consciousness that was more focused on the collective, whereas the mutants weren't really. They didn't really have characters they weren't different. But certainly the evil brother, he was very focused on himself, his potential child, and whatever his will is, which is also a word they interestingly used.
Yeah. No, it's very blatant that there's a World War II allegory going on.
Absolutely. I even wrote down discovering Tartarian technology. So
Oh, yeah.
Excavating the clockwork universe.
Yeah, no, that was, yeah. So we're talking about when the evil wizard, Black Wolf.
Blackwell.
Yeah. He decides to look around and find old technologies that he can reuse and make into something. And one of the things he found was the projector, which he was able to project Nazi footage and war films potentially around the entire world. I'm guessing it wasn't really made clear, but that's what it seemed.
It seemed like a kind of, maybe you could say, Ikean Saturn moon matrix. I think like the projection of reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, like something like that, I think. Like onto a crystal, the crystal then projects it into the atmosphere. This is what people see. But this is interesting that you bring up the projector, because it also goes along with my point. I even wrote down the reading. Before he introduces them to this technology, they are weak, and we even see a little sequence where the guard is, I don't want to hurt anything, like poor butterflies, the butterflies. And then the guys, oh, we have the technology that no one can ever defeat us. And then he's, okay, let's go. Let's fucking go. So I thought that's interesting, because it's like empathy as a mask for fear. Like he feels bad, but then once he feels invincible, it's totally gone. So that is also like with the propaganda film, it like fills empty vessels with a kind of ideological pathology.
Yeah. I mean, it's rather than going on faith or any sort of principles that you're standing for or believing in, they didn't have any of that. It was like, okay, we got this man-made thing that we're pretty sure will work, right? It's going to make us visible. And then suddenly they just trust it and the point is like, people should be going with their faith, their belief in magic, their spirituality, rather than what man is bringing forth into this earth. And because so this whole movie begins by explaining that there is like a nuclear holocaust, right? So it was technology that destroyed them before. And so this is like thousands of years later, and there's this new civilization. So that's one of the reasons why Avatar believes in magic and doesn't like technology, because technology only brings destruction and magic, faith brings peace.
See, this is a very interesting concept because for me, I immediately thought they even said even the area of the world in the film that is affected by the nuclear holocaust is called scorched. So I immediately thought that's so interesting, or scorched, not scorched, scorched. I immediately thought, wow, that's very Kabbalistic because you have this idea that if you overproduce fire and apply it to material earth, then it will actually burn the earth. So you can't actually create anything with it. It becomes creationless. So I thought that's so interesting because they're talking about like nature, like tending to the garden, like very Venusian. What is the antithesis to war or Mars is Venus. It is the garden. It's like this place where and in fact, that is the place where the fairies and the elves and and Avatar and all of these other beings live. So there's like you could say a world of fire and a world that is a lot more verdant, is a lot full of light.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Definitely. The garden metaphor, just bringing forth new life. Yeah, definitely works there.
Also, I think I should touch on that. Sorry, Blackwall. His throne is on a red swastika. So I thought this was just interesting because it does speak to this idea that you about a cycle. Like these other events happen thousands of years past. They had just been eating. Like it was like a sequence of wars. Then the technology would go to sleep, if you want to call it that. Then someone would rediscover it. Then it would go to sleep again. I think that's also a good metaphor for the swastika. It's very axial. It's time in a cycle. There are 4 turnings, and his throne, interestingly, is right in the center. Yes.
Yeah.
Pole star.
No, I was wondering if you had anything on. So the swastika was appropriated from the Hindu religion, I believe. So I didn't know if you had anything on like maybe how that ties in to anything here.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking me.
Because you're like the guy I go to for that.
So it's basically what I said. There's 4 quadrants. It's a wheel. Turns. So people have interpretations how it turns. Certain Buddhists believe in some texts that say it turns this way or this way, but the real idea is that it's a conceptual idea in Buddhism where we have it inside of us. So it's like a conceptual marker of reality. It's also let freely. We're not supposed to be stuck. It's like the idea of time, but then it also expands beyond that. It's this infinite capacity for loving kindness. That's really what it means at the end of the day. So you could say that it was perverted in its worst sort of capacity. But you can also say that because they usually depict it as sitting flat on its legs. Usually in Tantra, we would position it on an axis so it can spin freely. So it's not inauspicious or auspicious. It's just free. We don't control it. It's like something beyond us. It's like it's like an expression of God, you could say. It's like we can't really grasp at it. It's just something that is. So we don't try and rule over it, but you can definitely tell in this sort of like greater occultism or greater Tantra that the idea of it going in a specific direction, right or left, actually gives rise to the idea of Brahmacharya, which is the left-hand path, or Dakshinacharya, which is more of the right-hand path. So or orthodox or heterodox, like you could say it's either or as well. Okay. So I don't know if that answered your question, or
No, it does. I guess maybe it's just not really connected to the movie as much as I thought it was. I don't know.
I think the movie speaks to, he is thousands of years, he's alive. I think that there's interestingly, the garden, as we said, the metaphor for that. In Kabbalah, the garden is the metaphor for infinity, or not infinity, excuse me, eternity. Very important distinction. Whereas the wheel is which is I'm arguing or positing is martial. So it's Gevura, or strength or war at its lowest quality, the fire that burns all things, the scorching fire. That is the antithesis because it's like cyclical, axial. Things can't be eternal when the wheel is constantly moving. But through fire, it's constant transformation. The wheel's constantly turning. It's like grinding the garden. That's what I thought. So I do think that there is a relationship. I think that it's about burning the earth, scorching the earth so he can have his dream, which is paradise. But at the same time, paradise already exists. He just has to accept it.
Yeah, and it's what his brother has created.
That's right.
Is that And
Through
I mean,
peace.
and it's just he can't, because he lives on the half that is that's been decimated by radiation, and so he wants to get in the good lands.
That's right. But I don't
Um,
think there's anything particularly prohibiting him,
yeah,
but himself.
yeah, that's true. Because it seems like the mutants, they're not particularly like hateful. They're just dumb, and
Yeah.
they'll do whatever anyone tells them to do. Like anytime they flash to just an image of the mutants fighting in battle, it was always like a couple of guys, and like one looked shot and the other was like thought he died, but turns out he was all right. But then his friend accidentally shoots him with his own. They're just like dumb, killing each other over friendly fire. They don't really want to fight. You mentioned the one scene where the guy didn't fight until he found out he could become invisible. They just didn't really believe in anything. So if Black Wolf decided to go another direction, he could definitely get them to do that also.
That's what I thought was interesting, is that they even called them the frog-like mutants, and I couldn't help but think of obviously online.
Yeah, yes.
But they're not inherently bad, right? Not necessarily. They're just malevolent because they're chaotic. They're not necessarily malevolent because they have a governing ideology that is inherently, it's just chaotic. That's all it is. They're just chaotic. They need a strong man leader. And so he does it, but as you're saying, they aren't effective in battle. That's why he searches for the technology. That's why he wants the projector in the end, is because he can use the projector to fill them with that martial spirit. You could even say, pass on that energy. Maybe that's what magic really is. Maybe that it is just media. Quite an interesting idea.
Yeah. So just by projecting that image, it's just magic, because it gives them like inspiration to, oh yeah, these images are cool. Look, those people marching. But it also puts fear into the enemies, which makes it seem like, oh, we're actually doing something, right? Look at how afraid our enemies are. It must be because of us.
Yes.
And there is that propaganda is a kind of magic in a way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it can just change people's minds right away.
It's interesting even that you say that, because we're saying that the frogmen or the mutants look upon the film and they draw from it a source of power, whereas the fairies look upon the film as a source of fear. So both of those things are quite interesting when you're talking about like media or occultism in media, simply because both of those things are effective tools to both accomplish magic, but maybe also more MK Ultra, we'll say, devised means.
Yeah, no, the media, it controls people's mind. In the past year, every time I talk to one of my relatives, they're freaking out about something. And then you talk to them, you calm them down, but then they see something else, and then they're freaking out again. And it's a tiring cycle where it's, oh, you really do just believe anything. And it's like they've been possessed or been controlled by something. So I would have put it past them, Black Wolf, or running some sort of propaganda on them now. Spirit like that. So
I understand that in a funny way, because obviously I'm surrounded by it's just a very interesting media landscape right now. And it's a very interesting just news story wise. And I'm not the biggest consumer of news. I definitely bring my own ideas to what's going on, but I'm not like specifically a parapolitical person, right? Like I just look at it through my own way. I don't really think about it as it's not like what motivates me throughout the day. So I do think it's interesting though, because I think that's a lot about even the film itself, is that there even is a fairy who says always been, as always has been that way, referring to not accessing the technology. We just live like this because we always want to live like this. Is how things should be. But as we move through, we realize like the fairies is not all like perfect. It's not all like love and light. There is something like a little bit maybe primitive, maybe chaotic, maybe lacking individual agency about the fairies in general. Not all of them. Certainly, they don't mind being, they're as much of cogs in the machine as like the mutants, in my opinion.
Yeah, no. One thing about the fairies is that they like to horse around. They're a little bit more lackadaisical.
Yes.
And that's the weird thing is like in the middle of when they're trying to fight the mutants and they're going to Avatar and Weehawk.
Weehawk.
Yeah. Weehawk.
Interesting name as well.
Yeah. And so they're going into fairyland to talk with them because the fairies have some information or something. But yeah, and the fairies are just really annoying Weehawk, and Weehawk's an elf. And then you find out that the elves and the fairies are like, oh, there's some rivalry going on. It's just stuff like this. Okay, even in the peaceful kingdom, there's a little divide between these two groups. Like they get along for the most part, but it's probably like how maybe people from the Northeast and in the US look down on people from the South or something.
Yeah, probably. It probably is something like that. There probably is some like little thing. He calls them bad blood cousins, Avatar, when he's explaining it to Weehawk. Weehawk, very interesting name, very Aeon of Horus, like very much. But in the Aeon of Horus, really the hero should get the girl. But we'll get to that when we get to that. But I just think like there should be more of a romantic underlying story, but that's okay. One other thing I thought was interesting was when they pan to this elf village or this fairy village, there's a mom nursing a baby and her little son asks her like, where's daddy? And she says, oh, we're in the middle of a war. The town is falling. So he's guarding our house. And she says, and the little boy says, why don't we fight back? And then the mom says, they have weapons and technology, but we just have love. So I thought that was also really interesting.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah,
you kind of want to shake her and be like, you need some technology at this point, which is what the president of Montagar, is that the place where the wizard lives, Avatar?
Yes.
Yeah. President Montagar, before he got assassinated, was angry at the good wizard. He's look, we should have some technology.
Yes.
We get that this is good, but there's some stuff going on out there that we need to protect ourselves from. So yeah. It's again that compromise that's needed.
That's very
kind of theme.
That's really interesting that you say that. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is that there is this idea of liberation from destruction. And I think that's even a line. It's like our liberation will come from the destruction. But this is actually a fairy saying that. So I immediately thought, okay, this is very like Tohu versus Tikkunim. So some people might know this idea, but one is destruction and one is rectification. There's an idea that both of those two things, like to reconstruct something or to rebuild something, it first has to be destroyed. So I thought that's a really interesting idea when it comes to the fairies, because they have these, like, I'll call them anarchistic kingdoms that, as we said, they're not all perfect, but they generally resolve their things in peace. But they're not particularly fixed. It seems like their sense of time, like they don't have a swastika they worship. They don't worship time in the same way. They just live their lives, play, and that's it. They have no structure. And you could say that is the difference even. I was thinking that when you said Avatar taking a nap, I was like, that's really what sets him apart from the brother. That's what makes the brother very of Mars. He's very set in technology. He's very set in the constant transformation of space and time through his control or his will.
Yeah, Avatar does get along with the fairies very well. They annoy him a little bit, but eventually he ends up getting along with them when they visit that village. But he does get his temper up around the fairies, though, and that's like the first time you actually see him get angry, I think, throughout the whole thing. He was always like just lazy, nonchalant, didn't really care about anything unless Weehawk or Eleanor like prodded him a little bit to do something.
Oh yeah, you're totally right. He even says a line that I thought was really interesting and telling. He says, I should have stayed with the fairies because they just loved magic. And so I was like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Like, he doesn't really want to be of the world of politics. He doesn't really want to be of the world of like technological civilization. But at the same time, because he practices magic, his teleos is always with him in a way, because his technology is magic. There's a point where those two things are the same.
Yeah. And there's one point where he turned over in bed and was going to go to sleep and was like, just wake me when the planet's destroyed. Like, where he was just like, look, if I can't win this by magic alone, like, I just forget about it. Okay, I'm done with this. And everyone else is, no, you're like 9,000 years old. We have the rest of our life to live. So please, we need to.
And so that's another interesting way that he negotiates between the sage and the fool archetypes, which would also be like, even doing that is like sometimes like real magicians or real occultists will change their consciousness between the magician and the fool. That's why those two cards are often cited. Because I do this. I will say, I don't know about everything. I'm okay with that. I'm very comfortable with that. I'm not saying I don't want to learn things. Of course I want to learn things, but I'm comfortable in that space of not knowing. So that's a fool kind of consciousness. Whereas the magician consciousness is like, what can I make from these things that I do know? So it's like the alternative current. You could almost say like the pull, like the plus of ultra. So I think that's a way that he negotiates between that. And I think it's vital for the magician to travel, as they do travel, with that sort of ability to shift consciousness, because I think that the magician isn't as stable as Weehawk or as the prince.
Yeah. So have we talked much about Weehawk?
We have not. So why don't you tell me about Weehawk?
Okay, Weehawk is an elf. And he's the one that represents the elf tribe there is going on this mission. I think we're introduced to him because he was there were two elves that were sent out to try to kill Kron 99 before he assassinated the president and became peace, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really good. He starts off as the guard. Exactly what you're saying. There's like a long tussle, few minutes at least of on-screen time. And yeah, Weehawk is unsuccessful and too late in thwarting the assassination attempt, as you discussed. So that's basically where we get introduced to him. So I don't really have that much notes other than his name is Weehawk. He has black hair. He has brown. He wears brown clothes. For me, that feels like he's very connected to earthiness. Like the black and the brown are the two colors of Malkuth. So it's like he is like of the earth. The fairies are all of the earth in their own way. Like the fairies with wings are more of the trees or the verdant world, but the elves are definitely more of the physical earth, like the elemental earth.
Yeah, he reminded me. He just looked like a Disney Native American from the 1980s or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, he just very much reminded me of a Native American character. Just the ears were a little bit pointy. He's an elf.
He is very stoic. So
yeah, he is.
It does fit that archetype of what you're saying, like that native, like stoic warrior, the noble savage. He is like that.
Yeah, before he, I think, had that tussle with 99, the robot. Like he was like his horse or whatever, emu. I don't know what they're riding. They ride some weird animals.
Yes, it's a very weird animal.
It looks like a vulture face, but like a sort of an ostrich body. But one of the things he was riding died, and he like set up like an altar and was praying at it when the robot came to attack him, and he turned around with the blade. But it's just, yeah, that seemed like a very Native American ritual to do, is like your horse gets killed, you set up an altar and pray for it, right?
No, 100%. And I also think it's interesting because he does have these like shining golden eyes. It is very like he's like a ranger. That's what even I would describe his fighting style. Like he's shown to know martial arts sometimes in some
Mhm.
instances, but he can shoot a bow and arrow and he can wield a short sword. So all in all, I would say definitely like native brave archetype. I'm on board with
Yeah, a patsy
that.
warrior. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And then Eleanor, I think we should probably talk about her for at least a little bit more. I had one note on her that I didn't mention, which is her name, which I thought was interesting, which means shining ray or shining light. So that is metaphysically interesting simply because that is often the name given to the. It's not that Eleanor is that, but the idea of a shining ray can be said to be the mind born ray of God. So what precedes the word? So what precedes the sun? This is a more Christian way of looking at it, obviously, but the sort of the thought, the epinoia. So I think that's the interesting idea is that the Eleanor can represent like that, the thought, maybe even THOT way, but she does represent the thought because she is like a fairy. She's of the earth. She's of nature. She's of magic. She's a student of the magician. And so I just thought that's an interesting sort of pairing right there is that there's Weehawk, who's very like Aeon, as I said, like Aeon of Horus. He's represented by a falcon or a Weehawk. And he is this the ranger. The ranger is very mercurial. If you want to give like RPG classes to the planets, that's what the Mercury would be. He would be like an archer or a ranger or someone who's like a pathfinder, someone who's able to like weave among the paths. That's the idea of Mercury. I think that's interesting. I think both of those ideas are interesting because she doesn't really fulfill, like we talked a lot about this in American pop, is that she didn't, they, all of the characters had this like Babylon, oh, we're going to change the world together. She's not, that's not really her.
Yeah. No, and she's the way she is also just portrayed is just that she has wide hips, very fertile, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and that's the thing. Whereas like in 1977, it was all about like
Yes.
thin, flat asses. It was not that image. So the fact that he would choose to make her that way, yeah, it does represent like this Messiah rebirth for humanity.
That's a really good way to describe it. Like a rebirth, like she could be the primordial Eve or the primordial mother in a way because she's capable of giving birth to it, her fertility. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so shall we, I guess we should talk a little bit about when they go into the fairy cave or the inner sanctum is what they call it of the fairies. Or has been kidnapped because I thought this was such a great sequence.
Oh yeah.
And also shows a lot of like interesting things to bring up. Something that you were talking about is like that kind of what was popular in the late 70s. You have Bo Derek, you have like that wave figure, you have the sort of like the rise of that kind of like heroin look and you have, like Blondie and like it's just like it's very like punky. I don't know. It's like much more druggy Americana. Though she's not that, and you're totally right to point that out. I think that's a very valid way to both articulate and to describe it. But I do think that I think I lost my point. Okay, so we'll come back to that. I'm sorry about that, Eric.
No, I was like,
So no, go ahead, please.
no, go ahead.
No, so we were going into the fairy inner sanctum. And so when you were talking about that, I thought of the sequence where she's tied up and her hands are in the stones, in the monoliths. And there's that like little fairy who's clearly like a hippie. That's what I felt is that she had that like hippie look, like her hair was like really long and straight and she was like extremely thin. And they were like doing this thing like student protests almost. That's how I
Yeah,
described it.
yeah, it seemed like that. Yeah. Yeah, no, I got that same vibe.
And then they're telling Sorry about that. I got booted. My fault.
No, it's all right. Okay.
So I was just going to say that they were telling that council of rulers, like it was very council communist. That's what I felt. It's like the people, the students were demanding their voices heard, and their collective voice was to for being
Yeah.
building combat, building capitalists or something. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it seemed like that was like the angle he was taking on those fairies. Yeah. But no, when she was like trapped in the pillars. Okay, so I can't remember, how did she get out?
So she, as you laid out, she always needs the boy to rescue her. She's not really capable.
Yeah.
So boys come to rescue her. Actually, it's just Avatar, because Weehawk and Peace are actually knocked out, which is a really interesting sequence in some kind of spider layer.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yes.
So that was really interesting, I thought, and brought this kind of Tin Man, I guess you could say, and this other hero. I'm not sure exactly who he'd be, but you have Weehawk and then Peace, hero, and maybe a robotic. So yeah, they have this sequence where Peace rescues or saves Weehawk's life from this invisible spider. It's a really cool fight sequence, actually. I felt it was very kinetic and interesting and very well done. A little LSD, but it's of the time.
It's like a lot of the movie, though.
Yeah, there's a little psychedelic element to it as well, for sure.
No, I liked the fairy village. I liked when she was captured. But then, so once she was freed, I remember it was some sort of like journey in the snow. Was that part?
Yes.
Okay.
So they went on so Eleanor and Avatar escaped, basically. We don't know where Weehawk and Peace are. They're knocked out. That's all the last we saw of them. And then they journey up the mountain, this like a huge mountain, and they're like freezing. He makes sure Avatar makes Eleanor a coat. It's the first time she ever wears anything.
Oh, yeah.
Like there's anything. And again, they go ahead. Then they all pass out. Right when they're about to pass out, they actually are discovered by both Peace and Weehawk. And they carry them into a cave. So that's actually also interesting, just like very hero's journey, right? Like they fortified themselves through the storm. It's very Conan, in a cave in the mountain. And then they are able to continue on their journey after that. But what happens immediately after that is actually really interesting, and one of the main places where the plot really changes. I guess it doesn't change much, but it changes in the sense that it puts everything in flux. Like Eleanor, I won't spoil it. Yeah, maybe I should, because we have, is that she gets captured / defects on our heroes, as well as kills Peace in the meantime. So she commits like a multiple sanctuary thing, and she makes her get away in like a very interesting tank that sort of has this molten lava, black cube, and like emeralds are like a very toxic fumes look. And I'm not even sure how to describe it. It's like it's like technology that is also magical.
Yeah, no, it seemed, some sort of something from the future that is now the past that has been unearthed. Very strange looking thing. Like old technology, but looks like nothing we've ever seen before, like as far as new technology. Yeah.
Yeah, and so she jumps in that, and then they decide, what do they decide? So they decide to go confront the brother, can go confront Blackhawk. Or Black Wolf, excuse me, not Blackhawk. Black.
Yeah.
They decide to go confront him. So they make their way past. Oh, I guess that happens a little before that. I forgot about the fairy outpost. So that is actually interesting, because there's this fairy outpost. Avatar founded it. I'm not sure how long ago, but the implication is it was like a long time ago. Like we're maybe talking 1,000 years. It was substantial. but they say, oh, you didn't like ever come for us. And there's like a thing. And they're like, why you're going to go win this war with simply like the robot, the girl, and this little elf guy. So they dismiss them and don't really believe that they can do it. So this kind of sets like a darker, I would say a darker tone for what comes later.
No, going back to Eleanor, like her, just everything that happens to her, getting captured like over and over again, like accidentally killing. It's just that, yeah, definite femme fatale behavior. And when you consider the ending for her, it's just, okay, I guess she can do no wrong.
Matter the danger that she is in, or the people that need to rescue her. She has that it's very Venus, right? Like that horde of thing. It's like the diamond. It's like indestructible. That doesn't mean you can't steal it away. But just in and of itself, it's very hard to scratch or damage or cut. So yeah, she is like that, I would say. She has that like very like that element where she's a character of a character. She's not really, she has her own desires, but we don't really know what they are. They're very opaque to us. She just seems to go with the moment. She doesn't have a huge depth of like self she's running.
Yeah, no, but it just matches like the first impression you get of her. She lives up to it every bit.
So then at this point, we do believe that she is the femme fatale. I was convinced even in the rewatch that I was like, oh, okay, this is what must have happened that I don't remember, is that she's clearly defected and they're going to have to kill her. That's what I thought immediately. But then I realized probably not, actually. It's probably going to be like a little more, she's going to be able to be redeemable because it's not really that kind of film. It wasn't like the bloodshed was substantial, but in terms of our immediate world, we only lose peace. Yeah. So it's contained, I would say. They go to the city. Oh, they go on the boats. They have to go back to the ferry outpost. They go on this boat across the waters. What's his name? They have to swim into the Scorch, the place, the continent of the Ireland. And so they swim across, him and Avatar. Avatar's going crazy. And I even wrote down like he's doing like the whole thing. Like, he's going a little out of control. It works out in their favor a little bit. And they end up in the sort of a very Berlin, we'll say 1939 vibes. I don't know.
The sketches look like a Max Ernst painting, just something like that. It's very, his choice in art, like when depicting that area, like once you understood that it was like a World War II allegory. Oh, wow. He's just is very specific because every land is drawn in a different style. Like he uses watercolor sort of stuff for the fairy land, and then almost a charcoal type thing for Scorch. Art is like all over the place in here.
No, you're absolutely correct. That was a really good note that in everything in this film, the stylistic choices were more predominant than the colors, I would say. Like obviously in both films that we watched, color played a big role, but I would say actually animation choice in this film played a bigger role. Like it was more prominent to me because a lot of it was very earth tone or very like greens and blues, but like indistinct from each other. So I agree with you is that like the certain choices of like camera choice, saturation, there's a very interesting battle scene, which we haven't gotten to yet on the thunder, what I called the thunder plains, giving it like a Final Fantasy X reference. but no, I thought, that's a great way to describe it is like the town was like very much like a charcoal German. It's clearly German. It looks German, or at least like maybe borderland Germany, France, like a Strasbourg. And it was filled with SS officers or whatever the version was, but he looked like a skeleton. And then they end up, he's like a general, and they end up killing him because Avatar like bursts out from the corner, and they're discovered by this lizard. I forget his name. It was like Lenny or something.
Yeah, he was like a evil. He was an evil lizard that when the when Black Wolf was killed, later became kind, I guess, because evil was driven from the world.
Yeah. So so that happens. They kill him and then they go to the castle. So this is probably sounds like it's anticlimactic, but it's actually not, because it's actually what happens in this end sequence pretty much ties up a lot of the stuff that you and I raised, like a lot of the sort of ideas. It reaches a really interesting conclusion. So why don't you, spoiler alert, but why don't you tell everybody what happened?
He goes to Avatar, goes to see his brother, Black Wolf, and I forget what the discussion was about, but I just know that eventually Avatar pulls a gun from his sleeve. It looks like a Luger, like a German Luger type of gun, and shoots his brother, and that finally kills him. So he uses this technology, which he's always been against, in order to do something that is actually good for humanity, but also it's good for magic, because you won't have that threat of technology there anymore. That's what I got from that ending.
No, that's exactly what it was. He even says something really interesting. I haven't used magic in thousands of years, and I'm gonna do this crazy thing that Mother taught us. He taught me when you weren't in the room.
That's it. Yes.
And then he starts like casting. You see, I think the clouds gather over him, like very mystical. But then he pulls out the Luger. So it is his sort of like his relationship with technology or magic becomes his use of it. So he resolves the kind of paradox that there is a division between magic and technology in that action.
Yeah, you need to use a little bit of the other.
That's right.
So
so that was really interesting. And then what happens? So then Weehawk goes to rescue Eleanor, comes across the consort, queen, concubine, who is just given birth, apparently. So they're holding the brothers and her mutant baby, and he's beating up Eleanor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he is doing that, and then he's about to kill her, and then she says, what is this? It's like fairy versus fairy, blood versus blood, kin versus kin. We are better than this. We should need love. So again, speaking to something that the fairies often say is like the love is our greatest tool. And then you could also make the argument that, technology is actually one of the greater tools of the mutants, even though they're, as we said, they're dumb. But there is something interesting there that like that's their strength, and the fairy strength is love. So maybe you can combine those two things, and maybe you can be like, okay, we can actually use like technology appropriately.
Yeah, because the only bad thing about technology was because Dark Wolf was Black Wolf. Black Wolf, yeah.
Black Wolf.
Black Wolf was controlling, and
That's
he
right.
was using it for evil. So yeah, you can use technology, but it just has to be under the right guidance, and that's what the film is about. It's about good versus evil, and who is controlling things in the world. Is it someone with a good will or someone with an evil will?
See, that's really well put, and I probably didn't get enough into there's the whole Nazi angle, and they didn't play Triumph of the Will. For some reason, I thought they were going to when they started playing the propaganda film.
Yeah.
I was like, that would have been the perfect choice, but it is a little too kino. The one they chose was like a little more obvious. It was like a little more, you can tell it's like clearly a Nazi propaganda film. It's not like beautiful, like Leni Riefenstahl, whatever you want to say about her. At least her films are beautiful.
Oh yeah, Like she made beautiful propaganda films. I mean, her lighting, her cinematography, angles. It was just yeah, she was a great documentary filmmaker, but she just supported a horrible regime. You separate the art from the artist.
100%, and to believe in that.
Yeah.
Because people are going to enjoy what they're going to enjoy. It's not my. I know you're not like this either. We don't enjoy what you want to enjoy. I'm not the culture police.
Yeah. No, and speaking on that, so going back, I think we didn't touch on one thing that I noted down, and it was so when a couple of Dark Wolf's army people in his army go to investigate a religious space, like some religious building,
That's
and they're looking for a priest. And they're just like dumb guys again. They have dumb
Yes.
dialogue, just very working class. I don't know. What do they want with priests? I don't know. Maybe you want God on your side, so you got to get the priests. They were just, it was dialogue like that. But when they go in there, they find two people who, it's pretty obvious to me, are
Yes.
rabbis.
Yes, it's 100%. They're definitely like ecstatic, if you want to say messianic Jews. Like that's what they, to me, it was like obvious. And it was even like making fun of them a little, not like saying like it wasn't that they're bad. It's just that their rituals.
That was okay. So one of the rabbis has like a fly buzzing around him because he's been like asleep there for so long.
Yeah.
Something, I don't know. And then they start doing their prayer. And it's like this cartoonish version of prayers.
Yes.
And there's at one point, one of them is Jesus nailed on the cross, and he's like rolling it across like the stage there. And so I'm like, wait, hang on. Are these like, is this not supposed to be just Jewish prayers? Because there were other things like there was like an opera chorus that they were singing in the middle of one. I think some Rossini opera. I don't. I was just very confused about what they were supposed to be. I knew they were Jewish, but they seemed to represent like all religion, or trying to do like a cross. Actually, one like to make sure it was symbolized all religion.
So I think that you're right. I don't dispute that interpretation at all. For me, it was like it seemed like they were Hasidic, is what I took from it, but they were not all Hasidics. Obviously, Sachki's a great friend of this show, so like against being a Hasidic Jew, obviously. But for me, sometimes the more, you could say, anti-Zionist ones, I'm not saying that's bad or good or bad. And I take a very I don't care position. I'm not valuing either. I'm just giving it like context. So some of them tend to be like, it's the famous meme. Everybody knows who's online. It's like the killing the chickens, they have, it's a lot like Judaism's a lot about like little rituals that you do to absolve yourself. But in fact, all religions have these things. It's just that those things are a little more easily caricatured. I guess that's the right word. And then they wear the outfits, and then they have the hair, and it's like the whole thing, right? And even the two priests, they speak Yiddish. So I just thought, yeah, this is clearly like some Hasidic thing, and they're invoking God, but their rituals are like, they're not magic. They're not like Avatar, and they're not technological either. They're not like Blackwall. They're just rituals. They're just like, it's almost empty gestural things. And I think that's what really Bakshi was saying is, if you don't have the magic, then it's just empty. If you don't have the technology, then it's the same thing. It's like you don't have the electrical current to make it work.
Yeah, no, okay. I didn't think about that. Yeah, because I guess like the two Jewish rabbis were relying more on magic and faith only, rather than they needed some technology. Because what happened was, eventually, after 5 hours of praying or something, the soldiers were like, okay, let's go to a different plan. And they just blew the building up that they were in. Yeah, like you can pray all you want, but you actually need to do something. So there is, again, it's going back to more of a Christian thing, which is you should pray like everything depends on the Lord, but you should work like everything depends on you.
Yes.
And You need both of those.
That's 100% what it's saying. It's like, you are not a passive. This is something that I found in doing this series with you, is that a lot, like what Bakshi's interested in is like this sort of, I would say, but you could say it's like it's like an adamantine man. It's like very Adam Kadmon. You could say that, but I also think he's interested in what you're talking about. It's like the rectification of opposites, like taking these two things. You have technology, you have magic on one hand. There's a place where those two things are the same, but then you also have to interact with them. That's everything that the priests lacked. Their words were just empty. Their words were just nothing. And like, even I was thinking when they were doing the sprinkling of the water, I read a very interesting called Catholicism and Freemasonry, or Freemasonry Catholicism, which is from like 1912. But you're wondering probably why, what does that have to do with Judaism? The author talks about how the sprinkling of the waters is very Hasidic. It's very of Hesed. It's very of the waters of Jupiter, of mercy. So that's something I always thought was really interesting when I've seen Hasidics do that sprinkling of the water, because it's like, it's something that obviously Christianity carried over and then into, and it is like the pacification. It's supposed to be a pacification of evil, kind of. But it shows that it just can look ridiculous. If you don't understand the things you're doing, if you don't have if you're not plugged in, I guess you could say, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, I know. I guess the portrayal of them is that they were just performing rituals without even thinking. It was just blind performance without any
very
heart.
vaudeville.
Yeah.
Yes.
So no, I never really thought about that. And it's just because my initial reaction was like, oh, this is almost like blackface, but for Judaism. Like, but like, he wasn't really making fun of Jews. He was making fun of these type of people that are just performative religious people.
Yes.
No, as long as I pray, it doesn't matter what I do, like everything will work out. But that's not the case. Like, you actually have to have faith, and also you have to do things yourself. It's a combination of those. And so wow, okay, that's I never really looked at it that way. Okay.
Even what you said just now was very profound, because what happened at the end is that Avatar takes up arms. So he literally, quote unquote, does something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what he is. He's taking the action into his own hands. And so I 100% agree. I think you articulated it really well, and I appreciate that.
Oh,
You were
yes.
willing to consider, like, I know I can go a little hard sometimes, but I think you actually considered it, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, no. I always learn stuff from you, man, every single time.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you. But yeah, no, Avatar, when he takes the gun out, shoots his brother, it was also, you have to take into consideration, he is shooting his brother. And there seems to be some sort of, I don't know if I describe it as love, but a sentimentality that he has with his brother. Like, they've been feuding for thousands of years. I'm sure they've gotten settled into whatever arrangement they're settled into. But yeah, it's just the fact that he has to shoot his brother. He has to use this piece of technology. He's compromising a lot of himself in order to achieve something that is greater good.
It's very Cain and Abel, if you were going to give it a very biblical reference. But I think that there's actually
Definitely.
I think there are even deeper ones. Like, I think you could make more Kabbalistic arguments about who they were meant to be. I think you could say, if you were like looking at his avatar, like how I would, is like more messianic, like it's very Sochki. It's very like the star. It's very like the moon child. That's what he is. He's like the fool and the genius, the fool and the sage, both at the same time. So I think he needs to have an opposer. He needs that, if you want to use like a very Enochian term or a very left-hand path, like contemporary Enochian is very like Sataniel or Samael, if you're using more of the traditional Jewish angelology. Like, he needs the opposer, right? He needs the tester. He needs the one to force him into action. That's something very important in like especially like Jewish messianism, is that they always have to have the counterbalance. You could even say it's Zoroastrian. Like, you could say older story that like Ahura Mazda and the Ahriman.
Okay.
It's through their battle that the world both is rectified and destroyed, but both at the same time.
Yeah. No, I mean, he like Avatar is gonna have to deal with the fact that it can't be just magic anymore. You're gonna have to have some technology.
And that's the thing. I think that was the greatest. I think the ending was so interesting for that reason. So let's get into it. So we have our three heroes. They even make a reference to something both you and I spoke about in the very beginning, which was the garden. And like the world actually looked quite different in some ways from when it started, when they're on the mountain. It's like very lush and it's much more saturated, I would say, wise than at most other points in the film. And so there's the three of them. So you have the Trinity, you could even say. You have the mother and the father and the son.
Avatar, Eleanor, and Weehawk.
Yes. Obviously, we're missing one, but that's okay. It's because it can still work as a Trinity. That's what you were saying is there's like this underlying maybe Christian like tendency. Like he's pointing into that direction. Maybe he's not there himself, but he's saying, yeah, there's actually something true about Christianity. Because I think that there's also something that certain like more Kabbalistic Jews also agree with. That actually Christianity makes a lot of sense. And if you're going by the tree. That's how I feel too. I'm not Jewish, but I'm just saying that if I look at the tree and I think of Christianity, you can map out where they want to go. Okay, yeah, it actually there's a logic there. It makes a lot of sense.
No, and as a Christian, like this film made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
In that way.
That's what's really interesting about it, is that I agree with you, is that it plays with this idea of Judeo-Christianity in a weird, interesting way, actually, because it has both. It contains it's like a paradox that has like a little deeper meanings in the esoteric layer, but at the superficial can just be like, you could totally easily read this. If you weren't as a Kabbalah head as me, you could see it more as a Christian sort of parable, more C.S. Lewis pilled or whatever. But obviously I see it through the way, like my lens is how I usually discuss it.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, maybe it colors it a bit, but I think that, no, I think there's both. And I think that they're even with the ideas that I brought up, the tohu and tikkun, I think that is also like a good interplay between what like the two things I'm talking about, because at the end of the day, Ahura Mazda won, like the good brother won, right? So he takes his queen. We find out that they've been sleeping together likely for a longer time than we realized, but it was alluded to.
So there was one point, I think it was when she and Weehawk were trying to convince Avatar to go in and do something about his brother, talk to the fairies and figure out what's going on, how he can defend everyone from Black Wolf. And I don't know, there was some scene where he was lying on the bed, he was about to go to sleep, and she's, is there anything I can do to help? And he's like, why don't you just sit there for a while? And she was like sitting like on top of him, pretty much like in front of him, just tits like hanging out, pretty much in the breast. And yeah, so there's a lot of suggestive material throughout the thing that they were sleeping together, which is, it's always like Ralph Bakshi and his like Back to the Fritz the Cat, like just horniness. He's got that side to him that he's always going to let lead through a little bit.
Yeah, you're totally right. That's really interesting. So then, yeah, okay. So we find out they're sleeping together. Weehawk is to go return to the kingdom. Interesting. And rule it as the new leader, as the king or the prince. I don't know. And I'm sure she said, I'm just forgetting. And then they're going to start their own, exactly like what they said, like an Adam and an Eve, except he's not really an Adam, except in that way. He's like, I guess he's the Adam Kadmon. But he's old and he's like a very patriarchal figure. But what keeps him young is his foolishness, is his kind of like that weirdness, that kind of like return to monkey, the return to monk. Yeah, like
Yes.
that attitude keeps him young.
Yeah, no, he definitely just is more of he's a party guy. This was like, it's 1977. So I think a lot of the people in their 20s who saw this film would like admire him and be like, oh yeah, he just wants to like chill and hang out. And I think that that kind of like puts this film in a time capsule in a way, because it's just, yeah, the hero's was like late mid 70s, right?
It's the vibe is 70s. Like this is
Yeah.
a vintage. This is watching like really a vintage film. It's not
Yeah.
some of his other works, like I think you said Fritz the Cat. I love that movie personally.
Yeah.
That, because it's so noir, that could be any time. It could be a film from any time. There's a transcendent quality. This is very of the time.
Yeah.
But I like it. I think the vibe is cool. I think that it didn't overplay its hand with the flower children. I think it was very synthesis. It was like dialectical synthesis meeting in the middle, like appropriate technology, but magic also exists. I think that's like probably the healthiest attitude, to be honest, to have. I think I love this movie. I'd give it like a pretty high score, but I'll let you go first.
I would say 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's a great movie. I watched it twice this time around. First time I had seen it, watched it twice. So it's good. One of the things I think I want to mention is, so you brought up the music that I would dig. But so there's some scenes where it's just like Nazi armies, pretty much, from Black Wolf marching into battle. And it's like fusion funk. Right. Yeah. Like it's just 70s fusion funk with these armies marching into battle. Like a lot of the music is like 70s fusion funk, and it works really well. I don't know. If you just told me the concept, I'd be like, I don't know, but it really actually worked very well. So I do love the soundtrack. And also, everyone stay around for the final song at the end. Beautiful vocals by, I don't know, I don't think they give credit. I looked on the credits at the beginning and the end. I can't find out who sings it, but yeah, it's just a great final.
I totally agree. I thought the soundtrack was one of the stronger elements of the whole thing. I thought it was super well punctuated, super cool. I love that you brought up that sequence with the war, because it was like the thunder planes, and I thought the use of that negative coloration, or the way that they processed the film, and it gave it that negative quality. So it was like the dark blues, purples, and blacks, and it was real. They were obviously using some kind of stock footage, or maybe they paid a bunch of extras to ride horseback on the hill. I don't know, but
Yeah.
It was very cool, and I thought it actually went very well. It was like the inversion. And once the projector was destroyed, like reality, you could say it's very Buddhist, very like metaphysical, like the reality, the illusion of reality. It's not real, it's real, but it's like the Matrix it's just a facade. It just like, it burns down with the castle. You can finally see what the world really looks like. And the world is actually more beautiful than even before.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Yeah. That's a perfect summation.
I appreciate that. And thank you so much. Legit, dude. This has been like, honestly, one of my most fun series. I've done a lot of series. I love doing series, and you are honestly welcome back to do Fire and Ice, or to do Fritz the Cat, or any. Okay, let's fucking for it. I love it. I was telling someone today, I was like, this has actually been like the lighthearted return to something really cool, and no one's talking about these movies, so it's perfect for us to, I think, hit them a little harder.
Yeah, no, it is. And there's a lot of them that I haven't seen. I've been looking at his catalog, and I'm like, damn, there's quite a few that I'd like to watch that I haven't seen. And I just like, let's do this again. It's been great.
Okay, awesome. You are a true friend of the show. Okay, shout out to Monty for hooking this up. And obviously, him and I have our series that we are working on. Hopefully, we'll do free run soon. But for the time being, and not that this is not a filler series, but I actually am quite proud of the work that both of us have done, honestly. So let me say that to you, Eric. Thank you. And yeah, I guess there'll be more. And stay tuned for that. Do you want to at least plug your Twitter, Eric?
Oh yeah, I'm on Twitter, Organized Meat at Bazillion Plus. Yeah, follow me there. Same thing on Instagram.
Awesome.
So, that's it.
I will make sure it's in both the art, as always, and the show notes. And thank you so much, and have a great night. And so part 3 coming up.
I'll talk to you later, man.
Sure, sounds good. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Vegeta, thanks. For what? I should be thanking you, Kakarot. What do you mean? I loved every minute. Goodbye, Master. Yes.